Hello, welcome to Get Connected with Julie Barkus and Michael Tasner. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing very well. How about yourself? How's your week
I'm
going?
doing fantastic. The sun is out and I just got off of a client call, so busy morning already, but doing really well.
Did you get your workout in already this morning also?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I'm such a fan of the Total Gym. And me and my boyfriend were doing a little competition right now to see how many like ab crunches we could do. Well, at least I'm saying we're in a competition because that motivates me. So this morning I did like 80 ab crunches and he did like 70. So I'm a little bit ahead.
I liked your post, was it yesterday, the day before, like you guys exercising after a bike ride. You're like, one of us looks good and one of us is exhausted.
Yeah. If you go to my personal page, you'll see that picture. But yeah, one of us is beat and the other one looks cool and sexy. And I was not the one. That was him. And it's funny too, we talk about support and all that kind of stuff like with our teams. But one of the things that he does that I really love, and he doesn't think it's a big deal, but when we're on the trails and we're riding, it's like he'll actually reach out behind me, like if I'm struggling to get up a hill, and he'll reach his hand out and he just kind of like pushes me. And he says it doesn't even feel like he's pushing, but his hand there is just like supporting me up. And I go up that hill much easier with his strong arm out. So
Love it.
So that's one thing. So he does that all the time, which I think is amazing. So
I love it.
And he doesn't think it's any big deal. But I love the show that we got in store today because we're going to do FAQs. And I know we've been getting a lot of questions. And we're used to getting questions from our clients and from people who are trying to navigate during this time and, anytime and trying to take things to the next level, because it doesn't have to be just how can we get it now? It's about what's your vision and how do we get into that place to where, you are really living in that place where you're working towards the vision.
Definitely. Yeah. So I thought it would just be a good topic for us to kind of go back and forth and answer some live questions, but also, you and I get a lot of questions throughout the week, and some of them are kind of one-off questions that are really specific to that particular childcare center. But a lot of them are kind of repeated questions that I think a lot of our listeners would love to kind of have answered in a more organized fashion. So we're going to kind of do some fun rapid fire, and some topics we'll go a little bit heavier into if they need some more explanations. Some might be, a couple-minute answer, for example, but we'll kind of allow both Julie and myself to kind of give you all some nuggets and crank through some topics and have some fun together.
Yeah, and if you're here tuning in, say hello. We're doing this. Our show's called Get Connected because guess what? We want to connect with you. And that's why one of the reasons, and another reason is so that you can really get connected with everything that's going to help you be happy and fulfilled in your life. So say hello, like the show, share it out, let other people know, hey, they're on live, so come and join us. And if you have questions that come up for you, please feel free to ask them. And Michael is managing his computer there, looking at what questions might be coming in. So feel free to ask your questions, and we're here to support you. We're here to serve you and here to help you get to the next level. Plus, we're going to start doing some raffle drawings too for our t-shirts, our Always Essential line. If you haven't seen those yet, you could scroll down. If you're tuning in on my business page, you'll probably see plenty of pictures. But we're going to be doing some giveaways also.
So I've got a list of a couple of questions that I know that we get asked on almost not a daily, but definitely a weekly basis. And I'm sure you have a lot of them kind of off the top of your head as well, because you're doing a lot of coaching calls all day, every day. So let's kind of dive in and tackle some of these. So rather than kind of keeping them all around the same topic, we're going to kind of jump around a little bit. So we might be talking about mindset, then we might switch to planning or marketing or staff. So we'll try and kind of keep changing up the energy and the topics and things like that, and just kind of keep things flowing. So
sounds good.
Perfect. So I'll grab one of the questions that we get asked, but I'll let you kind of answer it at the first time. I'll throw it to you first. So,
is on.
So I just had a call yesterday, and this came up again, and it was a challenge of converting people from an initial lead, typically a phone call, but sometimes it's an email lead. How do you convert these into tours? And some centers, they kick butt at doing this. So like they'll get 10 leads and then they're going to schedule 5, 6, 7 tours. Some centers are like, we're closing 1 or 2 leads to a tour. So they're having either issues with, and I don't want to answer the question with the question, but sometimes they'll say, well, maybe it's the way that we're talking on the phone. A lot of centers will then talk about, well, they're just price shopping and things like that. So it all kind of correlates back to the question of Michael, Julie, and how do we convert more kind of raw leads into tours is kind of the overarching question.
Okay. And you want me to tackle that one first?
Oh, I'd figure I'd let you tackle that one first if you'd like. I'm happy to tackle it as well, but figured I'd put you on the spot this morning.
Thank you. I think, and that's a great question, and I think it's really important to understand where in the process when you're enrolling are things not working, and that's what tracking your numbers, and Michael talks a lot about tracking your numbers, but that's what tracking your numbers really comes in handy. How many calls are you getting? How many people are coming in for tours? And if the number's not that high, it's like, well, okay, well, what is it? And one of the things that I'm going to recommend to you is a mindset shift. And a lot of times when people call in for a tour, it's kind of like, woo, somebody called in. All right, we got somebody on the phone. And then they're in control of the conversation. They're asking all the questions. They're asking about price. They're asking about different things. What I really want to encourage you to do is in your mindset shift to where you're going to be thinking about, okay, somebody called. Are they going to be a good fit for us? And then you ask a series of questions that you have laid out to help you determine, are they going to be a part of our vision? Are they going to fit in with our culture? So that you can either rule them in or rule them out. The same as you would with a job interview. And that's a little bit of a stricter approach. But I believe that unless you're a huge, gigantic childcare program, you're elite. And people have to really want to get into your school. And we want to position you that way so that people are lining up saying, how do I get in there? And what's the application process? And what questions do I need to answer? So it becomes where you position yourself as the elite school that people are lining up, wanting to get into, hoping and keeping their fingers crossed that you accept them into your program. And that's a little bit of a different mindset than a lot of times the way that we look at it, where it's like somebody calls, how do we get them in for a tour? How do we convert them into a client? Are they a right fit? Are you asking the right questions to determine, are they going to be a right fit? Are they the kind of client that you want to deal with and the kind of client who you want to get to know? That would be my first take on it, is to really be looking at, is this somebody who I want in my program? And what questions can I ask them to rule them in or rule them out and shift your mindset? The mindset piece of this is huge because it's all about you saying, not so much are they interested in me, but am I interested in them? Do we want to work with them? Do we want to enroll them? And that's a big mindset shift.
I like it. So I wanted to have you answer it first because I knew that mine would be more marketing tactical and yours will be the piece that needs to come first. So as Julie said, I mean, so I'll give you an example of the center that we talked to yesterday. If they're already having the mindset that they're having issues closing leads, they're saying that everyone is price shopping and saying they're too expensive, well, then you're already walking into that phone call with that being the assumption that, well, you're already saying that these leads are garbage. So even if you get 100 more leads, if you don't start to change your mindset, and I loved how you framed it of you want to be walking into those calls of, are they a right fit for me? And that's going to then start to lead into more of the marketing tactical things. So we always love to do kind of audits of the phone script. So let's take a look and let's start listening to some of these calls. And we hear all of the time from everyone that, well, they just want to know the price. They just want to know the price. They just want to know the price. And when I start to listen to these calls, well, you're sadly then giving the price. And if that's all they're looking for, it's not giving you the opportunity to have that deeper conversation. And you need to be reframing that conversation. And I know that you mentioned, I know there's a way that you phrase it. And what we tend to suggest is to never give price. And we tend to use the word scholarship. So we have to chat with you in person or do kind of a virtual tour so we can talk about what scholarships are available at that time. So that's kind of how we phrase it. But often it's if someone is raising their hand and they're saying, hey, I'm use this hand. I'm interested in learning more about your center. I want you to treat that particular lead as if it could potentially be worth a lot of money to you. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So if you're thinking, well, they're just another price shopper, to Julie's point about mindset and getting you in the right frame, it's going to be a tough call if you don't, A, get yourself in the right mindset, and then B, start to have that structured phone script where you can engage with the family more. Tell me a little bit more about what's important in a center for you. Tell me a little bit more about your family dynamic. And if you're not asking those engaging questions and moving the conversation, it's not going to convert well to a tour.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that's 100% tactical is there is a complete direct correlation between how fast and how often you follow up and your percentages. So not only does your script have to be on point, but if a lead comes in, let's say it comes in at 10 o'clock this morning, and you call the lead back a couple days later or even a day later, your conversion percentage from lead to tour is going to continue to go down, because a parent might sit down and they might contact 5 Montessori schools that are within 10 miles of them, for example, and you might be one of those 5. And it definitely, it's not just a speed game. There's obviously more to it, but speed and the quantity. So I want you to be calling a couple of times. I want you to send a few text messages. I want some emails to go out. And it's not just, hey, when can we talk? When can we talk? I mean, I want them to be engaging and on point with the messaging and the branding of your center and the type of families you're looking to attract. And that, again, goes back to the right wording. So words are very, very important. So I love to encourage centers to use something like, when can we have a conversation to see if your family and your child is a right fit for our center? And that just completely reframes it to like, well, what do you mean a right fit? Or see if you're qualified, or, I mean, it's just different languaging to start to show that you're kind of in a little bit of a different league. So I know those were a little bit more kind of in the weeds tactical, but there's a lot of different elements of looking at. And when you change one thing, then you can continue to look at how does that impact. So let's say that you change the phone script, for example, and you're going to look at, okay, let's see how the next 10 leads convert. And if you were converting 20% of people from a lead to a tour, and the new phone script starts to convert 40%, if all other things are equal, then you know that you're starting to move in the right direction. So those are kind of we tend to, I mean, it's not a simple answer, but so there's, as you said, you've got to look at the mindset piece. And I love that of going into the conversation thinking, well, it's more of an interview where you're actually interviewing them versus the other way around. It completely changes the conversation.
Totally does. Yeah. And I think you brought up some great things, in terms of, making sure that you have a good process in place to do the follow-up, because that's where a lot of times we do lose it. We're so crazy busy. We're like, okay, who called when, so plug into a CRM that you can use, have a good process laid out on your website. So even with your website too, you could be training people, you come to the website, you fill out a form or an application, you could call it. And then when they fill that out, then they get a series of emails. They get direction to go to a page on your website where they hear testimonials or they hear your story. So even if you can't meet or talk with them like right away, if you give them like little bit drips of who you are and what you're doing and that positioning, they're gonna be like waiting with bated breath to hear from you. Like, okay, you called. That's so great. Okay, when can we come in? We've been waiting for you. So we really want to create that kind of anticipation with the process that we're putting into place. And I agree with Michael. It's how's the phone script? How are phones being answered? And to me too, the enrollment process, it's about having a well-defined sales process. And if that process isn't defined, and people are just answering the phone, kind of winging it when people call and want a tour, then we're not really going to be clear as to where we're failing if it's all real not defined and not scripted out.
Exactly. And the piece that I mentioned about treating each lead as if it were worth a lot of money to your center, one of the things that I'm really trying to encourage childcare center owners to think about, and they tend to not think about this particular metric, but lifetime value of a family or a child. So
love lifetime value. My goodness, that's like the big picture. It's not like you're just going to get $200 from them for starting. It's a much bigger picture.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of kind of scarcity mindset thinking comes through. So obviously being a marketing agency, I mean, we often hear, so one of the first questions is, what is the investment with you guys? And I'll say, well, here's the investment. So let's say it's $1,500 a month, and that might include some ad spend. And often what a center owner, if they're not thinking about the bigger picture, they're going to think, okay, I need to get like 3, 4, 5 enrollments every month just to pay for that. And I said, well, take a step back and think about this for a second. If you're investing $1,500, let's say you get a new enrollment in. Let's say you only get one enrollment in. And let's say it's on the mid to lower side. Let's say it's $800 a month. And again, we've seen 600, I've seen 12. All the numbers in between. Well, let's say it's 800. Well, if they stay just for 1 year, you invested $1,500 to get $8,000. So if they 10 months, assuming they don't do summer camp. But on average, most of the centers, they're typically seeing these children staying for 2 or 3 years. So if you start to think about that, let's say they stay for 2 years. So 10 months, 10 months. So you invested $1,500 to not get that $800 for that month, but over the course of 2 years, you're going to get $16,000.
Right.
So, you're talking a 10x on your marketing investment. And that's also not factoring in referrals. So as long as you do a great job, they're going to refer people. That's also not factoring in that they only have one child. What if they have another child or someone else a couple years later? So like I've seen lifetime value of one enrollment for some centers. If you factor in everything, it could be $50,000+.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to think about those numbers and have faith that you're going to continue to stand the test of time and you're going to grow. And the only way that I'm seeing these centers grow is if you're being able to plan out a little bit. And I know sometimes it's hard when things are in chaos, but if you don't start making some more of those bigger picture strategic decisions, then it's going to be a challenge.
I agree. And I think the lifetime value, it's so important to look at. And you said 50,000. I think that's a little conservative because I think the numbers can be really big, depending upon the lifetime value or the lifetime opportunity you have to serve that client. And referrals, absolutely. Where does it stop? We don't know. But if we treat people right and they become raving fans, it's such a benefit.
Definitely. Yeah. All right, so let's go to, I'll let you throw a question. So what is one of the top questions you get asked? We got a couple of questions on the across our platforms, but let's take one of your questions and then we'll answer some of these.
Oh my goodness. Let's see. So one of the questions that we get, and this is an old question. We'll see if you want to tackle this one.
Sure.
So I'm going to go to staff because a lot of times people tell me, we're a group of women working together. Can we work together without gossip? And especially in an industry, we've just been surveying people in our childcare business success group on Facebook about how many men are in your childcare program. And typically when I speak or go on site, we find that there's maybe 1, maybe 2 in a group of 30. So we have groups of women who are working together. Is it possible that they could work together without gossiping or without the negativity or without the drama? And if so, how do they do that? How can they make that happen in their culture?
I like it. No, that's a good
You're
question.
a man, so it's going to be really interesting to hear your perspective on this. And you might even have experience from workplaces that you've worked at where it was like gossip wasn't an issue.
Sure. Well, I think gossip is always an issue, but I think it's everything comes back to systems and processes. And with gossip and kind of workplace drama, as I like to call it, it all correlates back to communication outlets. So, and I'll even use my organization as an example. So, in terms of how I would course correct that, I would go through a couple things. So first, I would want to make sure that everyone has a direct line to the owner. Where they can submit questions, comments, feedback 100% anonymously. So we're huge fans of a tool called Tiny Pulse. which also has some other neat features. But one of my favorite features is it sends out a weekly question, solicits feedback, goes out to the team, and there is zero way, unlike tools like SurveyMonkey, which you can say it's anonymous, but usually people are actually tracking, see who's filling what out. So this actually, it's based on anonymity.
Okay.
So step one is I want to make sure that they have a different outlet, because often they don't have an outlet that they can kind of convey these things to. So they just kind of correlate back to the chatter or gossip in the break room. So that's the first piece. The second piece is really a regular meeting cadence with their direct report. And then also a structured kind of, I like to call it a town hall meeting, typically with the owner, that's quarterly. And that quarterly is, again, another forum where the owner of the business can kind of set the tone. Here's what we're aiming to accomplish next quarter. Here's an update. Here's what we're seeing, forecasting, new locations. I mean, whatever, kind of a great place to update the team. Because a lot of the gossip that we find is things like layoffs, things like someone's not carrying their weight. Are we going to hire new people? Are we opening up another location? Like all these different things that they tend to get gossiped on because there's no format for them to get their questions answered. So I found that the more that I communicate, and then also that direct supervisor, so I highly recommend a weekly one-on-one, so that your director sits down with each of their direct reports and has a structured one-on-one. It's highly, it's not just a sit down of, hey, how's your day going? Let's talk. It's a structured format where you're reviewing kind of metrics, but then there's also a section called SAR, Special Attention Review. And that is where they can literally ask anything that they want. So they want to mention, I thought I was about to get a raise 2 months ago. They want to mention they heard this, and it's got to be anonymous in the sense of like their privacy with the director, with the notion that they can involve the owner as it makes sense and as it's right. But the more communication that we've had, we've found that we've been able to answer a lot of those things that would have turned into gossip. So like in our company a while ago, when people were, gossiping on why I didn't get a raise that I thought I was going to have, or this performance review, or what's Michael going to do for the holiday bonus. And then like that's all these people are, I'll have someone on my team saying, hey, Michael, everyone's asking about the holiday bonus and they're talking about it and it's turned into this whole big thing. And I realized, well, if I would have addressed it in a public forum, that it never would have been an issue.
Yeah.
Then the final piece that I'll say is it really starts with the culture and what you're willing to accept and the type of people that you attract in the first place. So if you're doing a better job screening, if you're hiring, we hire based on core values rather than skill fit. So there's a new hire we're going to be making next week, and his skills aren't a perfect match for the job, but he is a perfect culture fit. And I would rather hire based on culture fit. And those culture elements are things that wouldn't correlate to gossip. And it really would start to rule out people that if that is kind of how they get their fix or what they enjoy doing. So it's a combination of a lot of things, but starts with hiring based on kind of core values and kind of communicating that culture from day one and setting the tone. And then from there, the way that we try and nip anything in the butt before it starts is quarterly town halls, a way for people to submit anonymous feedback and questions, and then finally those structured one-on-one meetings.
Yeah, that's good. I'm going to send my clients over to you. Fantastic. Go see Michael dealing with gossip. No. Yeah, I think that's good. I love what you said about the town halls. One-on-ones, absolutely critical for nipping gossip. Also, the other thing is the regular communication to make sure that you have processes in place. But what we've done is, and I actually wrote a whole program on eliminating workplace gossip. And we've identified like 40 things that lead to workplace gossip and what you could do when those 40 things transpire in your workplace. But I'm going to give you an additional tip. A lot of times the gossip happens, and it's true, it happens because of the culture. And women especially have more of a need to fit in. Well, people in general too. So I'm going to say women, but women are bigger at this. But we have a need to fit in. So if the culture is gossipy, and we even hired somebody who we redefined the values with, and we're like, okay, we really determine they are not going to gossip, if we put them into a gossipy environment, guess what's going to typically transpire? It's still going to be gossip. So what we really have to be doing is looking at the undertone of the current culture that's in place to understand, well, what's really causing the gossip? And like I said, we've identified over 40 things that really lead to the gossip, but there's a couple of them that I'll give to you. And one is lack of training. And what we really have to do is train our team on a lot of different things, but there's two things specifically I want to give you that maybe you haven't thought about before, is that team members really need training on confidence as well as on listening. Because if we could really train our people on how to listen and listen effectively, they're going to get less defensive when things are being said culturally. And it's not going to be like taken to heart where it's like, what did they just say? So listening skills is really important, and self-confidence is also critically important to eliminate workplace gossip. And it's in the NAEYC ethical code of conduct. If you have a problem with somebody, you go directly to that person and resolve it. But a lot of times in organizations, it's just not happening. And it's not happening because people don't feel confident. This is one reason people don't feel confident in saying, hey, so-and-so, I had a problem when, or, can we talk about this? So I would really be looking at those two things, listening skills and confidence, as part of your curriculum for what you're going to be training your team on. The other aspect of this is that when there are conflicts that need to get resolved, and I'll go to organizations, I interview every single level of employee in that place. And what I find sometimes, here and there a lot, is that conflicts come up and then they resurface, and then they come up again and they resurface again. And this is because there's no concrete resolution system or a conflict resolution system that's being put into place. So people don't know how to start the process of resolving a conflict or issue that comes up with a coworker. And then they carry these bad feelings with them. They're looking for an outlet. They're looking for a release. So then they go and talk to Susie about what's going on, maybe hoping for a solution. But in the interim, we're gossiping more. So when there's not a specific conflict resolution system in place, people are left to their own default, like, well, how am I going to handle this? And we know that our negative thoughts become like these concrete bricks on our shoulders. So if one staff member starts thinking a negative thought and then they share that negative thought with somebody else, they're sharing those concrete bricks, the load becomes heavier for us and it gets spread out and distributed among our entire team. So having a good, solid conflict resolution system in place is imperative. And then along with that, training your team on listening skills and confidence, because you want them to have the confidence to really follow through and implement that system. So those are a few of my things on that. And if you're interested too, I'll throw this out as a free gift for anybody. If you're interested in understanding what these 40 things are that lead to staff demotivation, shoot me a message, because we have a training series that's like a series of, I don't know, it's 30 something videos that I did, just little videos sharing with you all the different things that lead to staff demotivation in the workplace.
Love it.
So shoot me a message or leave a comment if you'd like access to that.
So hopefully that answers that question for everyone.
And it still comes up a lot, and the gossip thing, it's like worldwide. People from China to Germany to wherever are calling and asking about gossip.
Well, next question that we've got, we'll take one from someone that asked live. So this is from Tammy Wood. So Tammy's question, I'm just reading it real quick, but I think there's definitely was some similarities to kind of one of the questions that we've been getting heavily almost every day the last couple of weeks. But Tammy's question is, what do we say when we're getting calls asking if we're open right now? And then she replies that we tell them we're now accepting children for August, and then they end the call. So kind of how do you tackle that? So I'm going to expand on that question a little bit.
Yeah.
And just kind of say, if I generalize it, of what do you say to people that are calling that either you're not open now, or I think the other part of the question that we get asked a lot is, what do we do if I'm full? What do I say? Do I just say, sorry, we're full, we can put you on a wait list, or do we say something else? So would love to, if you want to tackle this one first, or I can, it's completely up to you, but let's work through this question, because I'm sure there's definitely a lot of centers that, again, either you're closed and reopening soon. I've seen some centers that have reopened and then sadly had to kind of pull back the reins a little bit in some of these areas, like Dallas, for example. I had no clue was kind of getting hit by a second wave of the whole coronavirus thing. So would love to kind of hear your thoughts on a script or a rebuttal or a reply to families that are calling instead of just saying, hey, we're full, or we're not open.
I would still take them through your script process of the questions that you have laid out. For people, I would still, and I encourage everybody to have like a little sheet of paper when you're answering the phones that you could be filling out with the information. Mrs. Smith called. She's looking for childcare in September. She's got 2 children, so that you're still continuously building your database of leads, because you never know. Even if she goes and takes another spot at another childcare program, if you have her information and you know enough about her, you could still send her a thank you note, because you're still building relationships. And even if she doesn't come and she doesn't enroll, it could be somebody else that she knows, and she'll be like, you know what? I couldn't wait for them to reopen, but man, they sent me a thank you note and they really made me feel like I was, part of their community already. So I would encourage you to still have that piece of paper. When somebody calls in, you ask the questions, you take down their information, and then you never know. November comes, you've got a few openings, you call them and say, hey, how's your childcare experience going? Just wanted to let you know we had a couple of openings here, and I thought I'd reach out to you to see if you might like one of them. So again, it's about the building relationship, but still be in control of the conversation, take the information. And then you can use that as a launching point to establish a relationship.
Love it. So my answer would be very, very similar. The only thing that I would encourage you, Tammy, to look at doing is, can you get some kind of small commitment from them? So can you still do a virtual tour? So I would answer their question of, we're opening in just about a month, even though it's 45 days, but it's all about framing it. So we're opening in just about a month. And then change the conversation dynamic and tone, so it doesn't kind of go to an awkward pause where they start thinking, well, okay. So to Julie's point, start to ask them a couple of questions. So we're going to be opening in just about a month. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your family, and tell me what is the name of your son or daughter, or multiple children that you're thinking of enrolling. And you kind of move the conversation. I still would love you to be conducting in-person tours if you can, and or virtual tours. So Julie and I talked quite a bit about kind of virtual tours and tours in general on an episode a couple episodes ago. So I would re-listen to that if you don't have a great tour process. But the other thing that we are seeing really great success with is if you have any kind of virtual learning or something that you can get them enrolled in now, even if it's gratis, and say, well, we'd still love to give you a tour, and we're opening in just about a month. We also have this really fun ABC childcare at home, and I can get you enrolled. And as a gesture of good faith in our way to help the community, we'll add you for free. So if you can just change up the tone of the conversation and the direction that it goes, because if you're giving concrete answers, like, are you open right now? No, we're not open yet. Then it leads to kind of that end of conversation. Or, well, what's your price? Well, it's $1,000 a month. Okay, thank you.
I don't know about you, Michael, but when I call somebody and I'm really excited to call them and talk to them, if I were just to say, are you open? And they go, no, I feel kind of like, I don't know, like kind of like there's like a hollow feeling. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I want them to tell me more, or I want them to say, oh, but we have this, or let me tell you about this. I want them to pull me in a little bit. And I think that's how people who are feeling too, who are really looking at you for childcare. It's like they want you to like sell them on who you are. And even if it's not right now, it's going to be later. So I don't know. So if you call someplace, think about how you feel when they just say no and you go, oh, okay.
Then it's the same thing with the wait list. So I know we addressed the first piece of the question, then we talked about wait list of trying to think the right way to phrase this so it comes across the right way. I mean, there's some centers that have a wait list that they sound a little like, what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, like a little stuck up about their wait list. And what I mean by that is someone will call and, hey, I just calling to see if you have any openings. And if you guys are open, no, we're on a wait list. And you're kind of like saying like, no, we're already full, but just put yourself in the shoes of the other side. So you could say, well, sadly, we don't have any openings right now. We do have a wait list. And let me tell you a little bit more about that. But before I do, can I get some more information from you? I mean, a lot of centers that I was having conversations with a year ago that told me they had a wait list. A lot of these centers no longer have a wait list because of all the stuff that's going on all around them. So you never know when something is going to change. I mean, I would rather see you have a wait list a mile long and around the block. And the only way that you're going to do that, obviously you have to deliver a great experience, but from, I guess, a marketing and a process standpoint, is to make sure you're still constantly conducting tours, to make sure you're always continuing to keep your pipeline, so to speak, full of families. Because even if they're on the wait list for a year and they don't end up being able to enroll with you, well, they might, again, refer someone, but they're going to remember that experience. And if the experience was, no, sorry, we're full, and you kind of say with a little bit of a tone, just because you're full and you don't think you can do anything else, it just creates that negative perception. And I want you not only to be, again, taking their information, doing a tour, but also to then continue to drip, whether it's drip emails, different things like that, whether you invite them to a Facebook group. I mean, whatever it is, that I want you staying in front of them, because you've got to play the long game in this particular industry.
Yeah. And you got to think about too, every conversation you have and, every call that comes in, great. It's fantastic when instant gratification happens, right? We get somebody who's interested, they enroll, and it's like, woo. But a lot of times in business, the seeds that we're planting right now are going to take time to actually grow into that dollar for your business. So, what you're doing, the action you're taking today is actually going to determine the success that you're experiencing in 3 to 6 months from now. So I'd really be looking at that too, like, oh, I got a call, going to get an enrollment, and the instant gratification is fantastic, but it doesn't always happen that way. It happens that we're planting seeds, and it's going to take nurturing, fertilizing, whatever it is, to grow that seed into something very prosperous for your program.
Exactly. Tammy said, I agree with both of you. Great feedback. Yes, I want to pull them in more. Thank you. You both are awesome. Thank you, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
All right. What question is next? Do you want me to pull one from my list, or would you want to pull one from your
You go ahead
list?
and pull one from your list. I like yours.
All right. So
if you have it, I'll think about another one too.
No, I'm just bring up my list here.
Okay.
So the question that we get asked often is, how do I differentiate my center? So usually this question is asked when you're in a crowded space. So maybe there's 10 childcare centers or 5 or 7, whatever that number is, within a kind of a pretty tight geographic area. So 3 miles, 5 miles, 7 miles. So kind of tight. And
you gotta love the question that when people ask, well, how are you different?
Exactly.
How are you different?
I think a lot of it looks at, people are looking at the website content. So everything kind of pulls in one. But usually the question is, Michael, how do we just separate ourselves from the pack? How do we show that we're different? And if all things are created equal, that a lot of times that's how they phrase it, but that's usually what they're saying. Well, if everything else is equal, if all these childcare centers are somewhat similar, how do we stand out?
You want me to give my response?
Sure. Yeah, please.
And I know you'll have a different take on this, but or maybe you'll have some of the same, probably some of the same, I'm thinking. But I really think that it boils down to you. It's you. And I know a lot of owners go into hiding, and sometimes directors can hide a little bit too, but it's really about you in your story. And this is what I was doing this morning, was coaching a client on telling their story. But it's really about your story. Your story is going to make you different. Your story is going to make people connected to you. And your story is going to be the thing that people go, you know what? I don't know what it is about Tammy or Cindy or whoever it might be, but I just connected. And this is where I know in my heart of hearts that we need to be. So to me, it's about story, and it could be about culture if the culture is an extension of your vision and of your story. But I always think it's really hard, if you have this whole list of things that you offer and there's 100 things on the list, they're just going to take that list and compare it to the childcare program down the road and say, okay, this is what childcare program A has and all the things they offer. What does childcare program B have? To me, we really want to move people far beyond that and say, who did you connect with? Who did you feel like is really going to take care of your little miracle? And I want that answer to be you, because they felt the difference when they interacted with you and your program.
I don't think I really have much to add to that. I mean, to your point, it's the story. It's the founding story. It's that whole piece of Simon Sinek saying they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So it's, going back to, why did you decide to start your childcare center? And if I ask that question, and some of the cases, not all of them, but a lot of them a lot of the owners that we're working with, they're growth minded. So they might say, well, Michael, I see it as a good business opportunity. And that's fine as an answer. But then I typically will say, what else? What else? What else? There's always some kind of reason that, well, my mom used to work at a childcare center or something like that. Or, well, I wasn't able to have kids, and this is so, like, there's always something that ends up coming about. But then the other piece to it is there's always additional things that just make you unique, and it can be the smallest of things. Like I think you were mentioned, or one of the centers that came on live a couple of episodes ago was talking about how they have coffee and blueberry muffins.
Yes, Deidre.
Yeah, like in the lobby. Or the waiting area.
Homemade blueberry muffins.
Yeah, and it's just the fun things, like, and you could build that into the story and just say, like, if you were talking through the story, and, well, I know what it's like to be a busy parent on the go, and one of the small things that we wanted to do for the families was to give them a healthy homemade breakfast in case they didn't have time to grab breakfast, so that they can know that their child is well taken care of and they can feed their tummies. Something fun like that.
Yes.
Will just start to separate you from the pack. If all things are created equal, and there's 5 centers and all the curriculums are the same, similar curriculums, and your facilities are the same, as Julie said, you're the differentiating factor, whether it's you, whether it's your teachers, the longevity, their background. There's just so many ways to bring that story out to then start to show the differentiating factors. Because even though a lot of people will say, well, they just want to know the price and that's what they're making the decision on, rarely is price the number one factor. Now, if you're charging $1,500 a month and their budget was $800 a month, then that's a different story. But they're typically not going to make a price decision if the numbers are somewhat comparable. It's going to be who they connected with, who they feel their children are going to be the most safe with, a good environment. But it comes back to that connection, and people connect through stories much more than they do with anything else.
I agree. And people buy through emotion. It's, they justify with logic, but they really buy. And this is true whether they buy a job or whether they buy an enrollment. They're buying, and we're selling if we're doing it right. So we're always selling something. But they're going to be making that decision based upon how much did I connect, as opposed to the logical side of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Do you want me to throw another one, or do you have one?
Yeah, I have one. Unless you want to ask one, but I'll ask one, and I think this is going to be a really good one for you. So a lot of times one of the biggest challenges I hear is getting out of overwhelm. And how do we escape the feeling of being overwhelmed as we're trying to accomplish more success in our business? And I know you recently finishing your master's, managing your team. Did you finish your master's?
Almost, but
Almost.
my
Okay.
thesis has turned in 2 classes left.
Your
2
thesis.
papers.
Okay. So you were working on that thesis. So, how do we get out of feeling overwhelmed so we don't just curl up in a fetal position and say, screw it, the day's already over? How do we really get it to the point where we're still feeling positive and productive in the moment?
Well, that's a great question.
Yeah. And
Because
it's a good one that comes up probably for both of us.
no, definitely. Because that's often what I'll hear is if we're talking about redoing a website or writing new content and, oh my gosh, I barely even have time to sleep. How am I going to redo the content on my website?
Right.
So I'll give you a couple of answers. And like everything, I like to give feedback based on either things I've tried or implemented rather than theory. And I know you speak the same way of things you're putting into practice in your life or with the centers that you work with. So for me, the biggest one was looking at the bigger picture of my life. And I kind of put together, I guess, a life plan for the year and started to prioritize here are the different objectives and the different things that I was aiming to accomplish this year and kind of putting them in buckets. So what things are most important to me? So vacations, which kind of got thrown out the window, but we did get one vacation in February. So I had like X amount of vacation, like 4 vacations this year. I want to spend X amount of days at home. I want to grow my business to this level. Here are my health goals. So I kind of put all this stuff on an organized sheet. Again, I call it a painted picture. So I have one for my business and for my personal life. And with that, what I have found that the only way that I am able to keep my energy in the right level, because it's really about managing your energy, obviously your mind as well, but your energy. I found that I'm not going to love what I'm doing every single day. There's going to be some things like, oh, geez, I got to do payroll today. I'm never a fan of doing payroll, but hey, that's just some people don't mind it, but it's the tedious stuff and taxes and all that stuff. But I found that as long as I start my day with either one of 2 things, number one, I'm aiming to grab something off of that list that's going to move me in the right direction. So whether that's if vacations are on there, then I'm going to spend 15 minutes moving towards planning a vacation, for example. If I'm going to grab one of the business goals for the day, and maybe it's, what am I doing to move the business forward? Am I looking for a couple of acquisitions or something like that? So I'm trying to start my day off where I'm actually moving something forward that gets me excited. Because if I don't do that, if I jump in the days where I roll out of bed and then I go right to my phone and I start looking at emails, I will tell you that those days are not good because I'm reacting to everything, that I'm looking at the news, and I'm in a bad mood from what I read on the news, and then I'm in a bad mood about something. So like my energy changes drastically, and then I'm going to make excuses. Well, I'll do payroll later, or I'm going to do that, and then you're not in that zone. The other thing that I do is I use David Allen's Getting Things Done system of rating things in the 4 quadrants of important and urgent. So IU, IN, so important, not urgent, not important and urgent, not important, not urgent. And I found that a lot of things are not important and not urgent, and they're just noise in my head. And that was, I guess, the final tip that kind of combines with that is, personally speaking, I find that I feel most out of control when my mind is absolutely full. So I'm thinking about, well, I've got to do payroll. I've got to do this marketing. I've got to get ready for this Facebook Live. I need to do all these personal things. So if it's all in my mind and it's not documented somewhere, whether that's I'm delegating it, whether I'm putting it in my Google Calendar, something that I am literally thinking about those things in the back of my head all day long, or I'm getting ready to go to sleep and I'm thinking about, oh, geez, tomorrow I got to do this. But at the end of my day, I do about a 10, 15 minute brain dump. And often that's me just delegating everything that I want to get done to other people. And then I mark it delegated so that I'm then not thinking about, well, geez, did this person complete it? So it goes into a delegated folder. So that once a week, I'm going to look at these 50 things or whatever and make sure that they got done. So it's working on the things to me that actually matter the most so that you start your energy. I hate to admit this, but it's also has a lot to do with food. So I'm finally trying to change the way that I'm eating, and just literally started a couple days ago, and I'm already feeling more energy than I have in quite some time, that I'm
Oh,
not eating
nice.
the crappy food.
Congratulations.
So, I mean, I'd rather be going for fast food and grabbing something from Subway or Chipotle or something. Chipotle's pretty healthy, but
Yep.
when you get the chips and queso and then a drink and all that. But so that's obviously also a factor with energy. But start your day with some good energy, working on something that's going to kind of feed your soul.
Yeah.
Having a system for classifying things so that you're working on what's actually important but not urgent. Those are the things that tend to be the best things to get done. And then just make sure you're just always doing a brain dump, because there's that out of all of them, that last one to me is actually the most important. If I don't, if there's any days that I skip, I use a little, it's called the Aura Ring, to track my sleep. And it's a really cool tool. And I'll know, because it'll show lower sleep score. If I didn't do a brain dump, I'll sleep a lot worse.
Yeah. And the brain dumps, and that's one of the top strategies that I recommend, even if, we can look at all the different time management and productivity stuff that's out there. But if your mind is so full and it's just overflowing and you're never in the moment, because a lot of times we're at work and then mentally we're really at home, or we're at home and then we're really mentally at work. We're trying to sleep at night and we're really, in a meeting with our staff member. So if we're never really in the present, it means there's way too much going on in that brain of yours. And most of us who are entrepreneurs or leaders, it's like there's a lot. So I really agree with doing a brain dump, and I do that first, and I'll do it maybe even once a month, where I get out a big white Post-it piece of paper and just dump. And the reason I love using like a poster board piece of paper or a big Post-it note on my wall, and I've got several of them around me, but the reason I love this is because when you start thinking obsessive thoughts about something, you can just look at your paper and go, oh yeah, it's there. It's in the works. And so you don't even have to say that to yourself. But then when more thoughts come into play, you can add right to that brain dump to say, okay, here's more things. And you could even do team brain dumps. So there's a lot of really brilliant things that you can do with a brain dump. And there's even a planner that's designed just for doing brain dumps. And it's really a fantastic little tool where you could just like dump everything out and then put it into categories, decide what you're going to delegate. So really doing the brain dump and having a tool in place. And to me, the biggest tool, white sheet of paper, markers, continuously things on there. And then I really love the idea too, Michael, what you're saying with delegating and the quadrants of time management. Those are just really critical. But man, if you are able to get yourself to a place, and this is the tool of measurement, if I'm just sitting here out by the water, am I just here out by the water thinking about nothing or thinking about my successes? Then you're heading in a good direction. But if your energy is spiraling downward, that's going to determine the energy that you have, and that's going to determine the results that you're going to be getting. So clearing your energetic zone, dumping it all out, is critically important to escaping the feeling of being overwhelmed. The other thing that I want to just share with you real quickly is, because I'm a huge fan of visualization, is when you make out your task list for the day and you say, okay, I'm going to tackle these 3 tasks. I want you in the morning to look at what those tasks are and then close your eyes and visualize yourself moving successfully through those tasks. So Michael named a couple that aren't my favorite things either, whether it's doing taxes or just kind of things like that. Close your eyes and just see the successful completion of it. See yourself celebrating that your taxes are done or whatever it might be. But close your eyes and just spend a few minutes visualizing the tasks being done successfully prior to you doing each one of those tasks. And I guarantee you will have just a much more enlightening and successful experience with getting those suckers knocked out quickly.
Love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. So we're coming up on the top of the hour, so I want to do a couple things. I know we kind of went a little bit more in depth on some of these questions, but I think we had some really great content, and hopefully everyone enjoys this. So we've got
and if you're here tuning in and you did enjoy this, leave us a comment, leave us another question, like us, love us. We'd love to hear from you. It's called Get Connected. We want to connect with you as well. So
So we've got a couple of kind of fun announcements. So the first one is Julie and I, so we kind of went to our networks and kind of asked for some feedback on, is this a good time? Is it not a good time? Is it a bad day? We looked at Julie's schedule, my schedule. So we're going to move these. I believe we're starting next week. And we're going to move them to Wednesdays. Is it 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock?
1 o'clock Central Standard Time. So 2 o'clock Eastern.
Yeah. So 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern. So we're going to have our next show next week. So we're going to do some kind of whiteboarding this week and kind of prepare some more fun stuff for you. So we're going to go down to one show once a week. And you'll be able to kind of continue to bring your questions, and we'll have some different guests and things like that, and just continue to bring the fire and help and support you in any way that we can. And as always, I mean, Julie and I are always open to talking, strategizing with anyone individually, personally. So I want to make sure that you know of all those different resources. I know one of Julie's is Happy Childcare Team, where she has all the beautiful gear and things like that. They've got mugs that I think are beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Everything looks great. So that's happychildcareteam.com.
Yes, our always essential gear.
Exactly. And then her other main URL where you can go and grab just a ton of goodies is childcarebusinesssuccess.com. So she's got a lot of great stuff on here. I'm looking at some of your fun videos. You've got the Drive Method Masterclass. So lots of really fun goodies there. So that's,
I agree. Yeah, go there and check it out. And Michael's got a wealth of information for you as well. Where's your main site, Michael?
It is localchildcaremarketing.com. So that is kind of our main hub of all things for childcare centers.
Yes, and I know Michael would be more than happy to get on a one-on-one call with you, as well as me, to just really strategize with you. So you can feel free to reach out to either one of us if you resonate and would like some more information.
So as always, we're going to end with a quote. So if you want to grab your book and grab a quote, and then we will see you all back here next week, Wednesday, 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern. Please like it, share it, give us some feedback, comments, and we appreciate you as always.
Okay, I have to put on my glasses for this quote because this one's a longer one. All right. So this one is in a chapter called Make It Easy, Keep It Simple, and Experience Growth. And this was fantastic. I had the opportunity to interview the founders of Children's Lighthouse, which you know is a pretty large children's program. So this is by Frederick Chopin, if I'm saying his name correctly. And this quote is, "Simplicity is the final achievement. After one has played a vast quantity of notes and more notes, it is simplicity that emerges as the crowning reward of art." So I think we've all heard keep it simple. And I think what we want to do is really create a business and a model that is simple, but avails us with tremendous results.
Love it. Well, thank you as always for tuning in to Get Connected with Julie and Michael. Have a great rest of your week. Make sure you tune back in here next week, Wednesday, 1 Central, 2 o'clock Eastern. Talk to you all soon.
We'll see you then. Bye, everyone.